How did Yemen become this area that's so synonymous with drone strikes? Like, why did we approach Yemen differently than any other part of the world in terms of the allocation of drone strikes there?
In terms of numbers, I don't know. I mean, I think for a while the only thing the US was doing in Yemen was drone strikes against Al-Qaeda. But I don't know if there have been more drone strikes in Yemen than elsewhere. I mean, that's where we killed an American citizen.
Right.
That which got lots of headlines.
Right, on purpose. It was with no trial. They just decided. It was because he had joined ISIS. Is that what it was? Or
Al-Qaeda? And was a very well-known and popular, online presence, rallying people to fight. But the airstrikes in Yemen are, with US weapons are. That's what's really killing people, and meaning that people can't get food and aid there because you just can't move things around there.
Whatever came out of that guy getting killed, they basically, no one was punished for it. I mean, he's an American citizen. He was. I mean, if it was in America, if somehow or another this guy was in the suburbs of Chicago and they launched a drone strike on him, it would be front page news and it would be a real issue. But the fact that it was in Yemen.
I mean, and again, the legacy of Iraq and Afghanistan is that now we're killing guys like him with drone strikes or special forces raids here and there, and it's happening almost in secret, and no one's saying this appears to be illegal. I mean, some people are. You know which media outlets you can go to read about this, but I think most people are thinking if that's the alternative to invasion.
Yeah.
And trillions of dollars and American soldiers coming back with no legs for a war we don't understand.
Right.
I think a lot of people are willing to accept it. I don't agree with it, but that seems to be what's happening now.
No, I think you're right. The other thing about that is with a lot of these, even though it does seem to be illegal, people sort of shrug their shoulders and then no one pursues it and then it just kind of goes away.
Yeah.
But there's some stories that for whatever reason, like Jamal Khashoggi, did not go away. And it's still out there. Like, it was so egregious and so crazy that this guy walks into the embassy and just never comes out. And they're like, I don't know what happened. And then slowly you start getting a different story. And then apparently there's audio and perhaps even video of his murder.
Yep. And ordered, by the way, by someone who was hanging out with Jared Kushner afterwards, with apparently no mention of what happened.
Yeah. Now, as a journalist, when you see shit like that, that has got to hit home.
Oh, the last few years for journalists, especially, if he wasn't an American citizen,
right? But he did write for the Washington Post,
yeah,
right?
and was a resident. But I mean, I was arrested in Iran for a week a long time ago, and roughly the same time, an Iranian Canadian photographer was arrested, and she was raped and beaten to death. Jesus. So the people that are citizens of these countries, they're really bearing the brunt. And again, that's why I'm uncomfortable if people call me brave, because I get to come home.
Right.
With these guys, they can get to them and they can get to their families very easily. And that takes a whole other level of bravery.
The woman who's raped and beaten to death, what was she involved with? What happened?
She was a photographer.
She was just taking pictures of...
Yeah. And the usual thing certainly in Iran, but this is common all over the place, if you're a dual citizen working as a journalist in, for example, Iran, they'll accuse you of being a spy. I was accused of being a spy. They tried to get me to confess to being a spy. That's a very normal assumption out there.
And how long were you in jail for?
Just 7 or 8 days.
What was that like?
Actually, not too bad. I mean, psychologically it was bad because they were threatening torture and execution. Physically it wasn't too bad. I was fed. I had a bed. I was roughed up a bit. I wasn't beaten. But I did think it could last months and months and months, and I did think I could go to Evin prison. They actually put me in a car and drove me to what they said was Evin prison once, and then just took me somewhere else.
Evin prison?
Evin prison is where people have been tortured and executed.
So they just drove you there to scare you?
Drove me around for a few hours to scare me, and then took me to another place, yeah.
What were they trying to get you to confess to?
To being a spy. And they said, at one point, they said, do you honestly expect us to believe you travel the world collecting all this information and you don't share it with your government? I said, yeah, that's exactly how it works. And they thought I was insulting their intelligence by saying that.
What were you over there covering?
I did a series, one of the first series I did was called Holidays in the Axis of Evil. So I spent my first 4 years as a journalist undercover, wearing a secret camera. And luckily I appeared on a couple of docs with a guy who was not very good. And so I looked genuine next to him. So the controller of BBC Two said, give this guy a series. And I was racking my brains trying to think, wanted to be a foreign correspondent, wanted to cover conflict. Then George Bush made the Axis of Evil speech. And John Bolton added 3 countries to the list. So it was Iraq, Syria, Cuba, North Korea, Libya, Cuba were the 6 evil countries. So we went to all 6 countries. Me and one cameraman, handheld camera. Shane actually saw it, and that's when he first reached out, and I started talking to Vice about eventually joining them. But kind of documentaries from the streets up. So we were just trying to say, despite all the rhetoric about Iran, this is what the people are actually like. And it was kind of youth-led. We interviewed a bunch of students who were involved in some famous protests in 1999 where the police came in and smashed the dormitories and burnt them down and beat them. And I think because we interviewed them, we were then tracked and arrested.
Oh. So how'd you get free?
How'd you
get free?
I didn't know at the time, but if 2 countries have diplomatic relations, it's only a big deal after a week. So on the night of the 7th day or the 8th day, they let me go.
Oh.
Yeah. But I had no idea at the time. I thought this could go on months and months and months.
Now, when you were over there in Iran, what is their perception of the United States when you're talking to the young people over there?
Oh, love the United States.
Really?
Music, culture, sports, everything. And are extremely well educated about the United States. American foreign policy is a completely different discussion. But, one of the things we tried to cover was the Friday rally at Tehran University where you see everyone chanting death to America, death to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to cover it because they bus in old men from the countryside who sit there going, oh, yeah, death to America, death to Israel.
Really?
It's not something to be
so
taken
it's just
seriously.
some propaganda staged event?
Yeah. If there was a turning point in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars with Iran, Ryan Crocker, who was former ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Israel, Iraq, Afghanistan, straight after 9/11, he was sent to Geneva, where a number of countries affected by the refugee crisis were meeting to discuss how to deal with it. One of the countries was Iran. So they'd have this meeting, and then he and his Iranian counterpart would disappear for, he says, 7 or 8 hours over tea to discuss the future of American-Iran relations. They knew that they were going to get rid of the Taliban. So the Iranians said, okay, here's a map of the Taliban leaders' homes. If you take out those homes on day 1, the Taliban are finished. And Ryan Crocker said, oh, thank you. Can I take notes from this map? They said, the map is yours. We made it for you. Gave him the map. Let the Americans use Iranian airspace. Handed over some prisoners. They were absolutely key in us overthrowing the Taliban so quickly. And Ryan Crocker was making good progress in then talking about the future of Iraq post-Saddam.